Hey folks, thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you've been having a wonderful day. Tons of great sessions. And today, in this particular session, I will be sharing a lot more about Community Management 101. Just before we begin, quick intro into my background. My full time has been with PepsiCo, with another YC-backed edtech startup, and I started my career in consulting. On the side, I've been involved in tons of communities. One which has become quite large now, it's called the Product Folks. It is currently India's largest product community with over 80,000 folks. And in case you're looking to explore the space of product management, in case you just want to upskill or you want to contribute back to the community, please do check it out. Feel free to join in. It's a volunteer-driven community, theproductfolks.com. For the next 30 to 45 minutes, I'd love to share some insights that I have learned while building these communities. And in case you're sitting on the fringes and want to build your own, I'm sure these playbooks, these examples, these frameworks might help you. So getting started, you might see the screen has a Wikipedia definition of community. Don't worry, I think this is something that I just copy pasted while I was researching about a traditional definition of community, and this was exactly what my reaction was, right? So don't worry about it. I'm sure all of us have our definitions of community, and I don't think there's a right or wrong, right? But one thing that I'd love to focus on for this particular session is how communities are changing in 2021. And what I will do is I will share with you a couple of examples, right? The first two icons that you see on top are something that all of us have probably come across, and maybe you can take a guess in the chat section. The one you see on the top left, this is a very popular tool called Discord. One interesting insight that I'd love to share about this is it has come to lots of popularity today. It's been there for a long time, but you'd see many of these Web3 and gaming communities exist on this. The one that I'd love to share with you on the right is Reddit, right? All of us have probably been part of some subreddits. You'd have seen some content from here. Come over to Twitter, come over to LinkedIn, and if you haven't explored it, do check it out. So we have one of the most popular community tools on your left. We have one of the most popular community platforms on your right. This is an interesting one, right? The one that you see on your screen right now. Does anyone want to take a guess on what this might be? Right, just take a wild guess in the chat section. It might be interesting for you to check out. Yep, we can see some interesting insights there. Imagine if you could create a WhatsApp group that currently is valued at more than $50 million, right? Just to give you an example, this one is called fwb.help. It is a crypto chat group that started a couple of months back, and this screenshot is slightly dated, but you guys could go check out what the treasury currently holds. And the bottom right, I've just attached newspaper clipping that I came across online on how the NFT market is growing, right? And these four examples are just about how communities are coming to the foray in 2021. Whether you're building a platform, whether you're building a tool, whether you're getting involved in just building pure play communities, there is a scope that is super wide right now. And that's exactly why I'm super excited about this space as well. And now I'd love to share with you a small thesis. We discussed different examples of communities. We discussed different definitions of community. For me, community is where people, and for me, the definition of community, this is the thesis that I hold, is that people want an interesting learning space, a safe and exclusive bubble for them to grow and find friends along the way, right? And that's probably why all of you all have joined this session as well. For me, this is the way social media is also going to move forward, aka social media 3.0. Right? Let me know your thoughts on this one. But many of you all now will be wondering that, hey, okay, we know the definition of a community, but why should we build one, right? And I'd love to draw a parallel here with developers, right? So we've been on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and lots of people have been telling us how good developers are rare, right? And many of you all might agree with me here. Many of you all might have been facing this challenge, right? Lots of founders in this room while you're trying to hire. So I completely agree with you. Yes, they are completely rare. But I have a question here for you. What do you think is rarer than good developers. Okay, let me give you a very interesting quote by someone all of us follow. This is from Naval way back in 2019. What he says is proven community builders are even rarer and higher leveraged than proven developers and designers. And this is because there is no school or playbook for community managers, right? That's why it makes it super hard. It is very difficult to replicate. I think for designers, for developers, etc. There's lots of boot camps out there, lots of places that you can go learn, but community management is so new. So in case you find a good developer, good community builder, don't let them go, right? I've had some learnings, like I mentioned. I think I've been involved in building communities over the last 4 to 5 years. Couple of examples: I started building a growth community with a friend. I told you about the product, folks. We've currently started a community fund, right? Imagine just like how startups have accelerators where they can go from 0 to 1. We thought, hey, why can't we help lots of other communities with resources, with playbooks, etc., etc. So do check it out if you are already building a community. We'd love to chat with you. Couple of other communities that I've been involved in, and very interesting insights. So I'd love to share 6 of them with you. And the first one is one quote that I love, because here we start off with the mindset, and this is by the founder of Gumroad. The reason I keep this as my number one is because I feel a lot of other tips and tricks out there are quite tactical, and I will share some of them with you in today's session. But one thing that I feel is common to all community builders, and in case you want to grow and become great in this space, it is important for you to inculcate the habit of just giving without expecting anything, right? And just like Sahil said, I think give, and yes, you can definitely ask your community members, you can ask some senior folks in this ecosystem. They will be super happy to help you out. But with that mindset, just keep giving back, and I'm sure you will grow in this space. That would be my number one learning. Second, I don't think, especially in a space like community management, nothing here is built alone, right? And this is super important. Just like any team sport, I think community management is a space that if you enjoy working with people, this is definitely a great career for you. But it is important for you to take people along. And let me give you a quick example. Many of you have been building products, have been building startups in this room. I love drawing parallels between building a startup, building products, and building communities. You might have noticed that we've all been growing up on the Microsoft Word, Excel, that ecosystem, right? But in today's world, that is shifting to your Google Sheets and stuff that is multiplayer. So this is just a very interesting example for you to know that how can you bring more collaboration between your community members. This will just enable a lot more learning, a lot more growth. Whether you're building a product or a community, try to inculcate some team practices, and this is something that I think is super key. Just try building more and more activities, more and more initiatives that have more community members coming together rather than one too many, right? Next one I feel is again very critical. The base with which you build a community, whether it is a professional community, whether it's a personal community, is that baseline is people want belonging, right? When you're starting off, just ensure that you're talking to your community members as often as possible to understand what is it that they want. And one thing that you need to learn is that there is a slight difference between building an audience and building a community. And the more you can bring in those many-to-many interactions is where I think you'll be able to build a community where people really want to hang out in, right? So this is something that I feel is super critical. The next 3 is just like I mentioned. I think I'd love to draw some parallels between building a community and building a product. So I feel, hey, community is the new product, right? Whether you're in that 0 to 1 phase of a startup, or whether you're building a new product within a bigger company, just involving your member base, by involving your user base, I think you'll be able to build a much better product. The last 2 are a continuation of this. You might have heard while building startups that you need to focus on being small before you become big. Figure out that niche that you really want, that you're super passionate about, and that you want to build your community. I think this goes a long way. And the last one is a famous quote by Paul G, Paul Graham, who's currently running Y Combinator. He says this in the context of startups, where he says that you need to do things that don't scale, right? I'd love to bring this to the context of communities as well. Initially, at least from what I remember, while building growth folks, while building the product folks, at least till the first 300 members, I had that one-to-one interaction, right? Each of them, there was a personalized onboarding. I had some great conversations, and that probably helped us get more volunteers on board. That helped us understand what exactly that we wanted from the community, what exactly our community members wanted, and that helped us shape what comes next, right? So don't worry about scalable things right in the beginning. You will have lots of opportunities to do that, and you will figure it out. But initially, ensure that you are connecting with some of those members one-to-one, so that you understand what exactly you need to build for your community. As we move on, I'd love to share some case studies with you. Many of you all might think that, okay, hey, we've been talking about 0 to 1 for a long time, but is this something that can be applied at larger companies? And you'll see 6 logos on your screen, all relatable brands, right? And I will share a couple of links in the chat section where you can go back and learn more about these companies and how they inculcated the habit of community. Each of them have had critical pivots. They've inculcated community in a very, very nice way. I'll take 2 examples for this session. The first one would be Airbnb. This is something many of you all might have checked out. Airbnb, when we go to book a room, we usually end up on the consumer side, right? But they have a URL which is with community, and I'll drop it on the chat section, where the supply side onboarding was done entirely via this link. They have probably 1 million members there now, and this has helped them scale out there in a long, long way, right? And for any marketplace, many of you all might be building one as well. You know how critical it is to crack that chicken and egg problem. Supply being one of the hardest things. So community has really helped Airbnb shape up their supply side of things. I'd love to pick up another example, and this is with probably all bike rider fans in the audience here today. Many of you all might have heard about Harley Davidson. They have a community called HOG, which is essentially Harley Owners Group, and they form this completely outside. It is an offline community. Airbnb, for example, is an online community, and here they organize bike rides, they come together, and this just enables the community to become a lot stronger, right? Likewise, I think for Sephora, for Lego, for Nike and Starbucks, there have been lots of examples where community has helped them. I will drop in links on the chat section for you folks to check out. But what I was trying to say here is that it is a model that is scalable. This is something that startups in their 0 to 1 phase can use, and large corporations, billion-dollar startups can use community to enable growth, to enable different parts of their business to grow, right? But now you might be wondering that, okay, hey, we understand what community is now, we understand why it's important, and some interesting examples as well. But you might still be wondering, okay, if now I want to start, how do I get started, right? So for the next couple of minutes, I'd love to share some interesting examples, some interesting points that other people have also shared, as well as a framework that I think might be super useful, at least in the 0 to 1 phase. On the screen, now you see 2 screenshots that I picked up from Twitter, one of them from Greg and another one from Rafi. Greg is very respected in this space, so in case you aren't following them already, do check out their profiles on Twitter. The one on the left that you see is how do you get your first 1,000 community members, which is super important. And Rafi in fact replied back to that tweet on how do you retain your, or how do you engage your 1,000 members, right? Which is also equally important. So feel free to take a screenshot of this, or you can go back to their profiles and check it out. And now I'd love to share with you my framework, which I've got after building a bunch of communities. I wish I knew this while I was getting started, so I'm hopeful for everyone who's been waiting to start your community. I'm hopeful this is something that will be really useful to you. So in case you have a paper and pen around, please feel free to note this down, or feel free to take a screenshot at the end of this. Let's get started, right? The framework that I have named it, it's called Do Top Know, right? And the reason why I call it Top Know is as you start building communities, as more members join in, you'll realize that everyone has an opinion, everyone wants to build it with you, but oftentimes it is important for a community designer or a community builder to ensure that you are prioritizing you'll have lots of opinions, right? So you need to pick the one that is super critical for you right now and that is most useful for your members. Build this framework on your own, but that would require for you to say a lot of no's, right? This is a habit, not easy, but it is something that you will have to inculcate in case you want to grow in this space. To get started, the first one that I'd love to share with you is figure out your target group, right? And by this I mean it is very, very important for you to get started in a niche to figure out who you're building this for, right? If you're building a professional community or a personal community, doesn't matter. Let me give you an example, right? For the product folks, we knew that we wanted to start off really tiny, build for product managers to begin with. As the community grew, lots of other folks joined in, right? Aspiring product managers, product designers, product marketers, but initially we focused on a niche. So it is important for you to figure out who you're building this for. I can give you another example in case you're building a personal community of food lovers, right? In that you can break it down to a certain genre, right? Imagine you want to focus on people who love desserts, right? So figure out that niche, that genre that you can start with, and this is key because a community grows where there is more shared attributes, and the closer the bond, that's the stronger your community will last in the longer term, right? So that's why figure out your target groups. This is super critical, and that would be my primary goal and my number one. Next up, it is important for you to figure where you're going to build this community, right? Whether this is an offline community, whether this is an online community, whether this is a hybrid community. In the past 2 years, especially as we went into a pandemic, you would have seen a lot of offline communities shift completely online. And as we come outside, as things go back to normal, we're going to move back into a hybrid environment. So it is super critical for you to pick that because different playbooks exist to grow different types of communities. Next up, figure out who your power users are, right? And by power users, I mean people who are active in your community, people who want to help others grow within your community. And it is, as I shared earlier, community is a multiplayer game, right? So you, for example, might have started the community, but it is critical for you to figure out who are those people who can help you grow your community, and y'all can grow as a group, right? Think very, very long term here. It is super critical for you to find these set of users because beyond which I can assure you that it is very, very difficult for you to grow your community, right? Different ways that you can find your power users. These could be your friends and family. These could be some early users who you've interacted with and you find them very interesting. These could be people who are inherently very active in your community, right? Try talking to them, try giving them some roles and responsibilities, and this will definitely help you. Next up is your name or your brand, right? And the reason I keep this number 4th and probably not first is that I think lots of us get stuck in what should we name our community, and that could be a point where we might get cut in this discussion, right? So keep that to a little later. Once you figure out who you're building for, once you figure out who your power users are, once you figure out where you're going to build this, I think that is when now you need to start focusing on what you should name your community, how you can design your community, the brand that you want to build around your community, right? It is super critical, no doubt about it, but I just keep it a little later in the journey, right? And the last point that I have here stands for the different size or different phases of your community, right? The kind of activities, the kind of growth initiatives, the kind of engagement initiatives that you'll do while your community is in the 0 to 1 phase will be quite different from that you'll do when it's in the 1 to 10 phase, when it's in the 10 to 100 phase and beyond that, right? So it is critical for you to understand that there is no one size fits all. In that early phase, you might have to just onboard people personally. You might have to have numerous conversations on a personal level, one-to-one, which might not be the case while you are at maybe 1,000 plus or 10,000 plus, right? It might be super difficult for you to do it then. So you need to figure out some activities, and I will share a worksheet with you towards the end with some things that helped me, but hope this framework was useful. Do let me know your thoughts on this. One other interesting thing that I'd love to share with you is the 3P framework that I often share. The first, patience, stands for patience with people. As a community builder, you will be interacting with people day in, day out. If chatting with people, interacting with them isn't your thing, then maybe you might want to, rethink your choices. But I can assure you, the more you enjoy interacting with people, the more patience you have. You'll have lots of members come in with lots of queries, right? You need to be there for them, and that's the way you can scale your community. So patience with people would be my first one. Second one would be patience with capital, right? It takes time, and I can assure you that unlike maybe, for example, a performance marketing campaign where you might see results overnight, right, or over like a week or 10 days, community management takes at least 6 to 12 months, right? And you need to take that into consideration while you're getting started. So have patience with people, with capital, and the last, patience is of course with time. Like I just shared with you, I think this is a very, very long journey. Had someone told me 2 years back that things would be as it is today, I think I might have had things so much easier. So I can assure you that if you can build consistently for at least 12 months, you'll start seeing results post that. And then you'll probably, I'd love to hear your journey, right? When you're building something for more than 12 months and you're still not seeing some results, feel free to reach out to me. But I can assure you things will change post that 12-month break. So have some patience with time as well. I felt this is something that is super critical for people to hear. Many of you all might be in a similar boat. And I remember this is something someone else shared with me, and I felt really nice and warm after that. So this is something I did include in my slides. Lastly, I'd love to share some myths with you all as I leave you all to think about how you want to build your communities. There are two ones that I've listed for now. First one being, lots of people say, hey, communities run on their own, right? Imagine if you can get interesting people, if you get say 100 people on a group and they expect things to happen on their own. Of course, these are ideal communities. We all want to get there, right? But I can assure you in 99% of the cases, this is not going to happen, right? You might be able to, it is critical for you to get interesting people together, no doubt about that. But it is also critical for you to start seeding in some initiatives. It is critical for you to guide some conversations. Moderation might be required. There'll be tons of stuff that happens behind the scenes. And this is something that you as a community builder need to start shaping up, right? And the next one is super popular. This one is called audience equal to community. We've seen these discussions online, right? Building an audience versus building a community. I can assure you it is not the same thing. And in a one-line definition, I'd love to share with you that building an audience is a one-to-many game, although critical, right? It does feed somewhere into your community as well. If you have a great audience, some of these might come into your community. But a community is always a many-to-many interaction, right? So if you have a one-to-many interaction and you're calling that to be a community, you might want to rethink that. A community is always that many-to-many interaction. You might want to build an audience first and build a community on top of that. That is completely okay. In fact, that's a great strategy as well. But yeah, these are two myths that I'd love to leave you with. This is another interesting screenshot of a tweet that Greg Eisenberg had put, and this is the second time I'm quoting him, but I can assure you you'd love to read his tweets. So follow him already in case you aren't doing that right now. I'd also love to share with you some resources. First one being the state of community management today. There are tons of tools out there, tons of people building in the space, and that's a great thing. But if you're a new age community builder, you'd notice that it can get overwhelming, right? This screenshot that you see is a state of community management report that Comsor had published in 2020, right? And I can assure you there are maybe 2x the number of tools today. So don't get overwhelmed. What I've done on the next slide is I've taken each of these buckets and I've listed 2 to 3 tools, right? So feel free to take a screenshot of this and you can refer it to later on. But for each of these buckets, I've shared some that I have personally been using after going through a lot of them, and I hope this is useful for you. If you are early in the space and you want to learn more about community management, is you can check out Art of Community, which is a great book for beginners. If you've already been building communities, do check out the Indispensable Community Building book. This is actually essentially very interesting tips and tricks, but not for beginners. And if you've been building communities for a long time and you're probably stuck after a bit, right? Imagine you've been in the space for 2-3 years, your communities are stagnating. I'd love for you to check out Happy City Community. I can assure you these are not things I had done early on, but I wish someone had pointed me to these structures. I think just building that structure, building these playbooks might really help you. Awesome. With that, we come to the end of this presentation. If you're ever in Bangalore or if you're ever in the same city, feel free to hit me up. I'd love to grab coffee with you. If you are currently building communities and if there's any way I could help you, I'm pretty active on Twitter and LinkedIn at Motwani Suhas. That's my handle. Feel free to DM me. I'd love to grab some time on your calendar, chat with you, and see if I can help you in any way. I love meeting people. I love interacting and hearing about your story. So feel free to drop me a line, and I'll see you soon. Thanks for joining in.